Emmy winner Jean Smart plays FBI agent and former vigilante Laurie Blake on the HBO limited series Watchmen. I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with Jean. And to start, this is a show that really doesn't offer simple sort of explanations in the beginning. And it requires you to sort of let it reveal itself through each of these episodes. And I'm just curious how much you were given about Laurie's arc, where she would be by the end of the season, and just the general sense of how things would go.
Well, they definitely didn't tell me where I'd be at the end of the season, that's for sure. But I only had a few days' notice to get a crash course in Watchmen because I was not familiar with it. And but I was really, really fortunate, though, because my first episode, which was the third episode of the series, which introduced Laurie, it was so complete, almost like a little film. Instead, lots of times just on an episode of a show, you get a little bits of the character, and then another episode you get a little bit more, and then a little bit more. But this was so beautifully written, and you got to see so many facets of her that it was very helpful and very satisfying. It's hard to say no after I read it.
I bet. Yeah. And she just has such a history that we know from the comics. She was a former vigilante. She's been in a relationship with the Night Owl and Dr. Manhattan. And then here she struck a deal with the FBI where she's now fighting vigilantes. A lot going on. Yeah. So how much were you thinking about just what Laurie had been through to sort of get to this point?
Well, once they gave me some of the information about her parents and her personal life, then you sort of, kind of file that away. And then I let the script just tell me, where to go. It's interesting because she seems like she's in such control, but she's really not at all. She's like a therapist's dream. It's like, always going after unattainable men, and it's just she's got some issues. Yeah.
And she's such a unique character just in how three-dimensional she is, like right away from the start. And she's not defined by being a mother or a grandmother. She's not really going through a midlife crisis or anything like that. She's kind of just a badass. And
I know. It was someone who thought I was going to play a badass at this stage of the game. No, it was so much fun, and such an amazing group of actors and writers and directors. It was just one of those dream things that you always hope for. It's true. She doesn't fall into any of those categories. So it was very, very freeing, actually, as an actor to play somebody like that. It's very complicated, but her relationships don't really come into the story. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of her dealing with whatever's going on, and she loves messing with people. I used to laugh sometimes because I think you're way too young, but I don't know if you ever watched the show Columbo.
I've seen some episodes.
Or occasionally he would, act like he was just sort of confused, even though he was just like totally playing with this person like a cat and mouse. You have like, no, let me ask you another thing.
Yeah, well, there is such a specificity to Laurie, just the way you play her. It's just like she's seen it all. She can't really be bothered with all the trivial nonsense. She just cuts right through it, how much of that was just on the page versus the choices you were making as an actor?
It was me, Kevin. It was me. It was all me, Kevin.
I knew it.
Oh gosh. Well, hopefully it was a combination of the two. No, it was real clear to me the way they'd written her. I knew pretty much how I wanted to approach her, and thankfully they liked what I did. But yeah, she's. It's interesting because she accuses other people of. It's sort of like pot calling the kettle black. She's she's in some ways she has such strong feelings about things, but she's not a particularly ethical person. She's not particularly polite. I mean, she's not particularly ethical at her job, but she would be able to defend the things that she says and does very well, I think. But she's obviously kind of damaged. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I would have liked to had a shot at her a little bit longer. Kind of sad that I don't get to play her again. But I was eating one potato chip. But I'm so grateful for it, because it was just really a fabulous experience, and just to play somebody who was that complicated. Mm-hmm. So it was fun.
Yeah. Well, going back to the third episode, we see Laurie in the phone booth sending this long message to Dr. Manhattan and telling this elaborate joke. And, there's no one on the other end of the line. She's just talking, but she's just expressing so much there. So what is it like to film a scene like that is just so reliant on you and no one else, and asking you to touch on all these different emotions?
Well, it was very sad. I mean, that's when it became so obvious that her sense of humor and the way she deals with people and keeping everybody kind of at arm's length, comes from such a source of hurt. It was a gift to me as an actor to have that glimpse into the other side of her, just from the get-go, We did that so many times. I did finally kind of get sick of that speech. We did that every which way from Sunday, and then I think a month later we had to go back and redo it, and not redo it, but shoot it again, because it was going to be on a screen that Regina looks at when she's yeah. So I had to remember. It's like they'd say, no. When you said that word, your hand was sort of reaching towards the phone, and then you turned your head that way when you said that line, and then
wow.
Yeah.
It's a good script supervisor there.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. That's one job. That's the hardest job on the set, I swear to God.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, when it's that technical, then it's kind of hard to be thinking about what you're supposed to be thinking about. But I had already done it so many times that it was okay.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Regina King. Anytime the two of you share the screen together, it's just magic. I loved it. I mean, how did the two of you develop that kind of sparring dynamic on set?
Well, she's such a pro. She's so great. And when I met her, I was sitting in the makeup trailer, and so was she. And she came in. I hadn't met her yet. And I said, Regina, and she came over, and I said, I'm so happy to meet you. And I said, and I turned to everybody, I said, you guys, this is TBW SME. And they said, what? I said, the bitch who stole my Emmy.
Oh my God.
Thank God she laughed. When I was up for, what was it?
Fargo, right?
Fargo. Yeah. She won, so that was. No, she's fabulous. And our scenes were, again, so well written. Because let's see, I guess the first scene is at the cemetery. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like, I love catching people off guard, or Laurie does, because she comes over and acts as if everybody should kind of know what she's talking about, and, offering her condolences and introducing herself to Regina's husband and kids and all this kind of stuff. And then just, again, messing with her, about masks and being a cop, and, oh, I know you're retired, and, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, that great scene in the later at night in the mausoleum in the cemetery, where she I think I've totally buffaloed her. And then she just gets me. She just gets me at the end, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun.
Yeah. How about just the rest of this amazing cast? You had Jeremy Irons, Tim Blake Nelson, Hong Chow, Francis Fisher. Yeah. I mean, what was just that atmosphere on set working with that caliber of talent?
Yeah, again, and I never take any of that stuff for granted. It was, you look around, you go, this is so cool, you know. And they were all so delightful and such pros. Tim has become a good friend. I just adore him. He's an amazing person, an actor, obviously. You know, my first scene with him, which is in his interrogation pod, which Laurie called the racist detector.
Yeah,
just annoyed the hell out of him. You know, that was great fun, and we met right there at that moment in the pod for the first time, and again, she just loves messing with him and pretending like she doesn't know she's messing with him, and you know, it was really amazing. You know, and Jeremy, oh my God. You know, I was so excited to meet him, and I didn't know what to expect. You know, I didn't know what he was going to be like. He's so much fun, and he was having a ball. And Hung is just incredible, and I loved doing those scenes with her in that bizarre set where she lived. You know, and Yaya, of course, and who else were we talking about? Oh God, I keep losing my earpod. I have very shallow ears. Apparently, there's not one that will stay in my ears. No, you know, and you find I find most of the time that the people who are the most talented are usually the most down to earth, easy to work with people. I mean, and I'm very lucky, knock wood, that I haven't worked with an actor who's kind of a nightmare, because I know so many people who have stories that would just curl your hair. I could not work like that. Some of the stuff, like my husband did a series with an actor, and they were the two leads, and they were doing, you know, they were working, you know, 60-hour weeks together, almost exclusively, the two of them. And they got to the point where they were only speaking when they had dialogue.
Oh, God.
I would have been a nervous wreck, and I couldn't have, you know. But I find usually that the people who are kind of difficult usually are not as talented as the people who are, you know. And I've always said this, and I worked with Meryl Streep very briefly, but I always say, you know, if Meryl Streep can be nice to everybody, I think, you know, you can too.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about this because Watchmen has these sci-fi fantasy elements, but the things that it also tackles are really rooted in some of the major issues that we are still dealing with, especially in America. And I think it's all the more relevant now, talking about racism and white supremacy and corruption. I mean, can you speak to just what the show offers on that level for viewers?
Absolutely. I was speaking to Damon Lindelof about this recently, and I said, is it kind of mind-boggling for you to have written this show almost being prescient about what's going on now? I mean, he so carefully crafted the show, staying true to the spirit of the original material, but setting it against the backdrop of that awful event in Tulsa in 1920 that was so shocking because I'd never heard of it. And most people at first thought that it was fiction. It was astonishing to know that not only that happened, but then none of us were taught that in history class. My father was a U.S. history teacher. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, but I never heard anything about that event. Now, Tim is actually from Oklahoma, so he said he had heard a little bit about it growing up, but not a lot. But yes, the whole, oh my God, also too, the the whole idea of if we all have a common enemy, we will stop fighting amongst ourselves, and that we will be better off. Mankind will be better off, whether it's, something like 9/11 that brought us together, or it's, of course, that caused other kinds of fighting, but something for us to focus on rather than infighting. That was Jeremy's character's philosophy, when he orchestrated the squid attack, which was almost like a 9/11 event type event, where people would be so terrified and traumatized that the entire world would stop fighting amongst themselves, and there would be no more nuclear threat, et cetera, et cetera. And so along comes coronavirus. The entire world kind of starts to cooperate, and we have now a common threat to focus on, and then also too this whole notion of wearing masks, and then again, all of a sudden we have this event of police brutality. I mean, it's just, the parallels are fascinating.
Yeah, it's eerie.
Unfortunate that it came true. But.
Yeah, just watching it again now. I was just watching some episodes this week, and it just really hits home now. Yeah. It really hits home.
Yeah, but there seems to be a sea change this time, and I hope and pray that we move forward and learn. Finally, it's kind of like every time there's an event like this, we usually talk about it a lot, and it kind of just goes away. Or there's a school shooting, and we're all just horrified, and we talk about it, and we discuss forming committees to discuss it more, and and then nothing happens. I just have the feeling that this might have been the time.
Yeah, I do too. I hope so. But just as we wrap up here, just to speak to something a little more frivolous, but still meaningful, perhaps. You are a bit of an Emmy darling. Let's talk about it.
Oh, an Emmy darling.
I think so.
Regina King.
Oh boy, I love this rivalry you have. Yeah, I mean, 8 nominations, 3 wins, pretty solid batting average. You won 2 for Frasier back in the early 2000s, and another one in 2008 for Samantha Who, one of my favorite shows, very underrated. You were also nominated for Fargo and 24 and Harry's Law and The District. I mean, getting all that recognition from your peers, is there just a favorite memory you go to whenever you think about the Emmys that just always stays with you?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's always exciting. It's always flattering. You kind of pinch yourself. The first thing that just popped into my mind, though, was the first time I won, I then also presented at the Emmys. I was doing a play in New York, and the director was very nice and let me take a day off, and I flew to LA to present at the Emmys. And James Gandolfini, I was always a huge fan of his, even before he became really famous. And he was sitting in the front row. And I noticed him, and then I noticed he was laughing at all my jokes. So that was a big deal. That was the big thrill. That was as fun as winning.
I bet. Yeah. One of my favorite actors. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, Jean, it was so great getting to talk to you today. We've absolutely appreciated it. Thank you so much.
Well, and thank you for the tech help. I'm such a Luddite. I'm just a dinosaur.
That's no problem at all. Yeah, it's fine. We got it to work. Yeah. And for those of you watching now, hit like and subscribe for more Emmy season interviews, and head to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions.